Buenos días a todos y a todas. Damos inicio
Good morning, everyone. We will begin the second day of our meeting. Before we officially begin, I will give you a few indications. In the toolbar of the Zoom, you will find down below the interpretation symbol. So please mark the language in which you want to hear the conversations. The options are Spanish, English, and Portuguese. The official language today will be Spanish. I also want to remind everyone that hadn't signed up yesterday, please do so. We will send a link now so that we can share all of the materials from yesterday and from today. Also, we request everyone to keep their microphones off, as well as their cameras, so that the only people with the camera on or the video on are Paracel and the speakers. Good morning again. We are beginning the second day of our online meeting with suppliers and future vendors. As we said yesterday, you are key players for the success of this project. Today, we will talk about the fundamental steps for doing business in Paraguay. I want to thank ReadyX for their support in the development of this event. Today, again, as moderator, on behalf of ReadyX, Federico Sosa is with me again. Welcome again. I want to invite our dear Niels to say a few words.
Tenemos la ministra en el video.
First, I want to... We have the minister. Good morning, Niels. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you very much for being here, Minister.
Y tenemos aquí en esta conferencia ahora 200 personas.
Now we've got 200 people participating, our vendors and future vendors of Paracel. They are the ones that will really build the factory. This large number of participants that we have shows the great interest of the Paracel company. We've got many foreign companies and Paraguayan companies also participating as vendors. So with these words, again, I want to thank you for your participation here, and I want to hand over the mic to the minister.
Gracias, Niels.
Thank you, Niels. Welcome, Minister Kramer. Good morning again. Special greetings to Niels again, of course, and our friends Blas and Nora Zapag. That as a Paraguayan, I thank deeply for this dream that they have been pursuing and that I'm sure will set the trace for the Paraguayan history. I also want to say hello to Rodolfo Boga and all of the companies that are participating today, to the Ministry of Industry and Trade teams who are also here through ReadyX and through SUACE, the office for opening companies. And they explained that since we have online interpretation, I will speak slow, but that my usual, usually I speak naturally. They told me to sort of write out my words so the interpreters can have an easier time. No, that's not, she doesn't have to do that. So I will read what I was going to say. I wanted to welcome over 50 international companies in this meeting who have shown interest in investing in Paraguay to supply us with this important investment that, as I said, will set up before and after in the history of our country. From our ministry, we've got 2 units. One is Radiux, the network of imports and exports. It's an office of attraction of investments. And then there's another office called SUACE, which is Unified System of Opening and Closing Companies. It's 2 different offices of this ministry that together with another 2 are working hand in hand with all of the different ministries, bureaus, labor, immigration, social security, that with everything that has to do with the treasury, well, we want to lead you and make your work easier so that you can set up in Paraguay safely, fast, and under the support of our team and the high commitment that you do it in the most professional manner as allowed by our systems. We do not have the technological level of the countries Niels comes from, the northern countries, but we really want this to happen fast. So we will put a lot of efforts so that we can help every one of the companies. One of the points to consider, ladies and gentlemen, when you come to Paraguay, is that Paraguay is about 7 million countries only, but we are part of Mercosur. So this makes us part of a market of 160 million people. Paraguay, we have to think of Paraguay as a platform from where we can stand to sell to Paraguay and to the rest of the world, thanks to the strategic location in Mercosur. We have these tax systems that make us competitive. Nonetheless, within Mercosur, there are some things that makes us stand out. We, throughout our history in the last 15 years, as you can see, we've had a macroeconomic stability, and the numbers have been stable throughout these years, if and when we still depend heavily on the weather, the climate situations. We are going towards diversification of the economy, using our energies, our natural resources, but going towards other sectors such as services and businesses. And all of this, all these natural factors that Paraguay has, added to the quality of life at a reasonable cost. Paraguay still has competitive costs comparing to the region. It has, and you must have heard, a very young population. We are a country with 70% of the population under 35, sorry. And this is a great opportunity because there are many young people here willing to work. We have a challenge there, that is to train these people. And for that, the state, through the Ministry of Labor and others, place or ease before the companies a training program for each type of company. You can bring a specialist here, or we can find a specialist, but please know that the Japanese or Korean companies that have come to Paraguay and have set up talk to us and say that the Paraguayans that have been trained by them under their systems, under their training systems, have the best productivity levels of the region. And this obviously is better if you hear it from other businessmen, but I'm very happy to say this. We have the energy that we use in Paraguay is 100% renewable. Everything that we use here comes from dams. This means that from the moment that you use Paraguayan energy, you are using 100%. And this already has value in the world. In markets that are more developed, such as the northern countries, that they give more value to the origin of energy or power. Paraguay is a second exporter of energy, and we only use 16% of the energy we produce. This is not good. We should develop our full potential so that we can use more energy here in Paraguay. And this government is investing heavily in order to do the distribution that was the main problem that we had, to be able to use the energy that we produce in full. And so we are in the middle of this, and the idea is that in 2 more years, Paraguay can use all of the energy it uses from the binationals and the hydro power. But also we are seeing substantial change in energy laws right now. We have a lot of sun, a lot of wind, and a lot of rivers produce other alternative sources of energy. And of course, biomass. I confess we have grown thinking that our strategic location, or that our location in Paraguay, in the middle of the continent, was a stigma. We thought we were landlocked and that was a problem, but now we see that we are strategically located. It is a location that places us in the middle of 2 large markets, and we are at the border of the Great Hydroway, which is the main vein that connects the continent. This South American continent has a great vein that is highly competitive, and it's called the Paraná-Paraguay Rivers Hydroway. And that hydroway goes through our country, and it's we must mention the issues that we have, and we are working because we do want to be serious, and Paraguay has a long road ahead of it, and we have to improve the business climate. We have to develop more competitive value chains. From the Ministry of Industry and Trade, we have just managed to approve a law for the creation of a type of more simple company. We are behind another law that modifies the guarantees through which the SMEs have access to credit. We want to solve anything that has to do with Chapter 11 in other countries. We have another law approved that is the factoring law. So this is a sum of things that are already in Parliament. We are trying hard for Paraguay to improve substantially, and we know that if we manage this, we will one of the rankings that we have decided to cover internationally. Yesterday, you must have had the opportunity of learning that we are at an investment grade. Paraguay still it's not investment grade, but we are one step away. And during this pandemic, where the whole world has gone out to the international markets to find funds, some countries with no capacity to do so, I want to say that in the middle of the pandemics, Paraguay issued bonds and was paid. We have sold the bonds as if they were investment grade, practically. So that means that there is a lot of trust on our numbers and for the way that macroeconomically we have been handling things. The problem with Paraguay, or the biggest problem, is the microeconomy, the developing processes that make the big companies and small companies and everything transform the territories. And in that sense, with full honesty, the development of this project in the north of the country will be not only a before and after for what the investment, the monetary investment implies, but also for what it means at a social and an environmental level. It will be the type of investment that we want to attract, to use our energy, to use our natural resources, and to spill, for there to be a spillover in the microeconomy for more Paraguayans to improve their quality of life. Those are the main attributes, besides, of course, the investment that I'm so happy about of my public services for this project. As you know, we have signed an agreement with the EU. They are in the process of being legally checked. There's always issues. There have always been legal issues, but we managed to close it anyway. So we are going towards that agreement that for sure it has a new platform in the relations between Mercosur and European Union. And once again, places Paraguay at a very particular position. Paraguay is the ideal platform for European companies to come and produce here so that they can sell to the rest of this great market called Mercosur. We are negotiating now with South Korea, with Singapore, with Canada. Negotiations that sort of go along the same ways of what we are seeking now to attract investment from these countries, seeking not only to sell them commodities and for them to sell us technology, but we also want to bring technology here and that they can produce in this area for this market. But we have to be ready to be competitive because we will work with these big blocks free of taxes, basically. The pandemic has affected us as it has affected most countries. The macroeconomy and the good work that we have done in the past have allowed us to sustain or to be able to withstand these 6 months. We have had some issues, of course. We have recurred to public debt, international public debt and local public debt. We have worked in areas of support to the contention and financing SMEs, financing large companies that work with the small ones. Now we're trying to promote the reactivation of consumption, but it is a year where we will have negative numbers. We hear from 3.5 to, or negative 3.5 to -5. That's more or less what we see. That's the local and international numbers. We're coming from a year in which we didn't grow. We had a growth of +4%. Last year we did not have a growth rate because of climate issues, but this year -3.5 to -5. We will see what happens in the next months. The good thing, I don't know if good, but it's interesting to know that it will be one of the less damaged economies of the region and with a better capacity of bounce back, according to the analysts, because of our strong incidence in the international production of foods. Our numbers are still low. We have done things well during many months, and that has led us now to hard times because we do not have the resources of developed countries to withstand everything that is a quarantine. So we're in different phases, and there are some signs of recovery in some sectors, but we say this with prudence. We're in September, we still have some months ahead of us. So we depend heavily on what happens with our neighbors too. Finally, we want to highlight that that investment level, or this pre-investment level, has been ratified during the pandemics. Other investments, other important investments have ratified their investment process in Paraguay. A request for assistance in immigrations has continued. We have had a lot of queries of other opportunities from neighboring countries, and all of this makes us think that next year, once we have overcome all of this, or once the whole world has overcome this world catastrophe, be it thanks to vaccines or thanks to the world having understand this new way of life, we will be able to leave this behind with a better condition of life for Paraguayans. Paraguay has presented an important package of economic recovery to Congress. It's underway, but it doesn't speak only of social funds, of health, but deep reform that the country needs and firmly believes in. And we think that COVID is an opportunity to do them, such as the reform of the civil registry and making the government smaller. And COVID, oh, see, we already knew this before, but COVID has placed us at a situation where now it's like now or never. So I want to close this once again, thanking you for the long-term vision of the Zapag family. I want to pay my respects to them for all of this, for this huge vision that they have had. I have known them since I was small. And I know that it's a family of many generations, betting on the region, on the country. Also, Niels, thank you for accepting this huge challenge. Rodolfo Boga and everybody that's with them. And I want to ratify the interest that the government of Paraguay has, so that through this portfolio and everything else that has to do with them, we can do everything necessary for this project to be a reality as fast as possible for the good of the shareholders and businessmen, etc., but above all for the good of Paraguay. Paracer will be a milestone in the economy of Paraguay, and we want to be part of that history. Thank you, Minister, and thank you everyone for the support that we have felt from the beginning of the project. And even though it's a lot of foreigners here, we work hard so that when the factory starts, it can be operated by Paraguayans. So with this, once again, thank you very much for your participation, and I will give the microphone to Federico. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Niels. Thank you, Minister. It is an honor for us to have you here. And we thank you for having said yes to this. And thank you for the support of your institution. And thank you because the Ministry of Industry and Trade is supporting us from day one. We'll continue with the presentations. After having heard these words of the Minister, we will give way to the first talk today. I will present Federico Sosa, who is the Director of Investment Attraction of Rediex. He's an economist. He's graduated in the US and a master in business administration. He will give a presentation, a special presentation for international vendors. Also, this will be good for our national vendors. Mr. Federico will be supported by Mario Catoni, who's an economist and part of the Ministry of Industry and Trade. He's an expert in the 1690 law and investment guarantees. You can register your questions, and at the end, we will answer them. Federico? Thank you, Latifi. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Minister and other institutions. Mr. Niels Grafstrom of Paracel, the SAPA Group family, and all the other co-investors. We are very thankful for this investment. This presentation is a bit modified. It's a country presentation, and I also, if you have any question, you can put your questions in the chat box. As Latifi said, I will talk about the 60/90 aspects, the investment guarantee law. And before we begin, also I'd like to thank everyone for their presence and mention that we have our investment guide available, in which there are versions in Spanish, English, and Portuguese available on the Ministry of Industry and Trade. This work was done during the last 6 months, and we will go more in depth on a few issues, and we can answer any questions you may have that are not answered there. We are available 24/7 to assist you. We want to thank Mario Romero who gave the opening words yesterday. So Latifi, Paraguay is in the center of South America. We are the heart of South America. Next. These are some macroeconomic facts. It's important for those of us that are getting to know us. As the minister mentioned in her presentation, these are some, it's a young economy, attractive, vibrating. Our GDP this year, of course, will have a negative number. Even so, according to international estimates, we're the second country with the best recovery rate in the region. We're only surpassed by Guyana, which has a 45% growth because they discovered oil, but we will have a strong recovery as well. So investing in Paraguay is key. Next. Our economy is quite diversified, and with this, we want to encourage. So for us, this investment in Paracel is very important, and also we want you to take advantage of all these opportunities. The exports from 2003 to date, as you can see, the energy was our main export in 2003. Now, farming products is the largest, and industrial energy, 4 to 3%. Exports with added value have also increased significantly from 295 million to 299 million. And with this great investment of Paracel, we hope that these numbers can even grow even bigger. Direct foreign investment has also moved favorably. The composition of foreign direct investment as well, as you can see, a lot of the OECD countries are the main investors in Paraguay, and also in sectors as finance, commerce, and oils. We might have to change this chart once we concrete the Paracel investment. So here we might see Sweden. We might add Sweden to the list. And this is all part of our diversification strategy of foreign investment. These are all the sectors in which Paraguay is now currently attracting direct foreign investment. We see this type of investments with good eyes because it helps diversify the economy. And also that this is strategic investment. It's close to the bioceanic route, and there's many other investments. So this gives it a lot of strength to the region. As our dear minister mentioned, Paraguay has 41 countries trust us There's a lot of investment from Asia, Latin America, and we are seeking to attract more investment. So for us, this is a very important project, and it shows that there's a lot of trust in our country. Paraguay is a good place for investment right now. We are 1 degree close to investment, so it's a good opportunity for investment, for purchase, because we have seen that Paraguay will reach investment grade in the near future. We are leading business climate. According to the Getulio Vargas Foundation, we are #1 in the business climate. And according to the World Bank, in the Doing Business ranking, we are improving. But of course, we are leading reforms, simplifying, opening companies, and making some laws easier so that we can move forward. Yesterday, we had some questions on taxes. So our tax system is very competitive and simple. We've got a comparative. We have something here with to compare with Uruguay, Brazil, Bolivia. We can have some tax deductions, 10%. For other value-added tax is also 10%. And if you add all of the social rates, and we get to 35% according to the World Bank study. So if we distribute dividends to non-resident. So doing a comparison with other countries in the region, Paraguay is the best place for investment and for setting up. Don't think of Paraguay as a regional platform for doing business, but to work with Parace, but think of Paraguay as the seat of your investment to work with the whole region. And here would be a good place to get to scale. That we recently had a tax reform. To 2019, there were 3 direct taxes on businesses. Now we have 2. I just had to mention that the dividend tax if we distribute dividends to the local investors, there's some dividend tax, and then the dividends are distributed to non-resident investors. But 10% is maintained. And we can talk about this with our friends from Treasury as well, if you have any specific questions.
Okay, I'm sorry. Disculpen. Bueno, vamos a pausar un poco. Régimen laboral, no voy a profundizar.
The work regime. I will not stop here so much. I will leave this for the Ministry of Labor, who I also want to thank for the participation in this intervention, also our friends from Immigrations, but I only want to mention that we have a very competitive scheme. Social Security is partly paid by the employer, partly by the employee, and we have similar norms with the countries in the region. Also, we mentioned this before, we have this fight against COVID-19. Ministry of Health also has several protocols that are applicable for the workplaces. I will also leave this to our colleagues. We are a leading country with regards to renewable energy, and all of the production and investment in the country can be considered 100% and renewable energy. So we have 100% renewable energy, and this is an advantage. Our energy cost is the lowest in the region, 5.7 cents per dollar. And we have a significant program, $500 million from the ANDE, to modernize the distribution lines, to make this energy reach all the corners of the country. There had been a question on property registry. Here we've got the property registry in the National Public Registry. We want to leave the slide here. It's got a manual, it's got instructions, also the SUACE office and property registry. This is important to mention because all of these things can be carried out. You can register any asset, but before you register the asset, it has to be incorporated as a company. That can be done through SUACE, which is more efficient and it's faster to register a company. Intellectual property, we have this. We have worked hard on digitizing and easing these services, making these services available. This is something that is also made. We suggest you go into this online page. Next. Excellent. We have also received questions yesterday and the days before on the investment guarantees and international agreements for arbitrage and dispute resolution. We are part of the OPIC and also MIGA and the International Center for Disputes. See, there's companies, if there's any company that has more questions about this, we can help them. Now we will go to the incentives for national and foreign investment. Latifi, let us know how we're doing with time. We're doing well, Federico. I'll let you know when we have 5 minutes. Also, I want you to know that we have these presentations translated into Portuguese and English, so we can share them afterwards. This is a brief summary of why it's important to invest in Paraguay. Low energy costs, economic resilience, growing economic diversification, low level of public debt. The rate of debt per GDP is 30%. It's very low compared to our regional neighbors. International average, we're doing economic, and we have the youngest population in the region. Next. I want to invite Mario Catoni, my colleague, so that he can do a brief presentation of the 1690 law. Mr. Catoni. Okay, while Mr. Catoni adds on, I want to mention that the law 1690 is a law, it's the most interesting law for a foreign investment attraction. It's got 0% taxes for the import of capital goods, and the VAT is also 0%. If you go into debt to import machinery, the import on the interest and the remittance over $5 million is 0%. This does not apply for construction works machinery. There's also a 0% investment on any investment on $5 million over 10 years. If we use the law 1690, we're not exempt of the non-resident tax. So Mr. Catoni and his team can go into further detail later on. I want to add something, Federico, that is always illustrative. Importing all the capital goods, machinery, and for the companies that are benefited by law 1690 has a cost that is minimum. The cost of adding all of the capital goods is between 1.5 to 2%. And those are the expenses of everything that has to do with customs duties. And taxes are all free. 0 taxes and 0 VAT for imports. So the import cost is very low to import the machineries and the equipment to set up in the country. I wanted to make sure you knew this, because when people do their numbers, it's always good to know about the final costs. Would you like to talk about the administrative process to use the law 1690?
Bueno, me gustaría aclarar un poco que Paracel de por sí.
I would like to say that Paracel in itself is a beneficiary of the law 1690 of all the incentives, but I understand that several suppliers are participating. that will provide some type of services, and they will need to incorporate machinery and equipment for these services. I would like to clarify that all the companies that benefit from the law 6090 can bring the machinery free of tax, but they have to use the machines in the country for at least 5 years. After that time, they can either return the machines to another country or sell them. Since this is a very specific investment, this will probably happen. Some companies will want to bring some heavy machinery or some special equipment to produce goods for Paracel. So basically, that's what I wanted to make sure was clear. And we are available for any specific and individual questions that the companies may have. Thank you, Mr. Catoni. Also, this was signed by MEEC and the Ministry of the Treasury, and it goes through a council of the investment board that is represented by different agencies in Paraguay. So we go on to the next slide. Maquila regime is also available. I don't think it applies too much in this case. Next. Raw goods regime allows the import of raw materials with 0% taxes if we can show or prove that they're used in productive processes and there's no national production of these, or if they're not made, if none of these machines are made in Paraguay. Next. Again, Mr. Catoni can talk of the investment guarantee law. Well, this law was passed foreseeing that the companies that would invest in the country had a projection and the security that at least during the first 10 years, there would be no tax variation on the investment that they will do. It's a warranty, depending on the requirements that the law has with regards to amount of investment, manual labor. This tax fixation, so it can be extended to 20 years. It's a law that is current and is also, or Paracel will be subject to this, as well as other countries that come and companies that come to set up, to support Paracel. So they are subject to this law. Thank you, Mr. Catoni. It's also important to mention that this law freezes the business environment for 10, 15, or 20 years, depending on the amount of the investment. So it's very attractive for these long-term business investments. We have 5 minutes, Federico. Okay, APP or incentives. In Concepcion, there's some industrial parks. This would be they would be potentially available for you. We've got a list of 20 available industrial parks. Free trade zones. We've got 2 of them in Alto Paraná. Doesn't apply too much in this case. Next, budget. We have mentioned the Mercosur and availability for any additional investment that you want to do in the country. Next. Something that doesn't apply too much, but it's something we wanted to share. Paraguay will make the best of the new agreements with the EFTA and the European Union. Next. We've got a network of bilateral agreements with several countries, and this will also ease the imports of Paracel and any company that wants to invest in Paraguay. Next. We've got agreements with regards to with other countries. This is very important for all of the vendors. And also We've got agreements that avoid the double taxation with Uruguay, Taiwan. Next, okay. These are our key investments, and in the productive capacity, we're #1 in many of these areas, and we also want to be #1 in pulp or cellulose. To wrap up, these are our strategies to attract investment. The pulp investment here is very important, and also we are also looking for investment in these other areas. This is very important. It's the brand name of Paraguay, and it gives like an added value to all of the. It's a concept that helps place us in the market and get added value for the exports. This is the sustainable business such as food, cities, energy. We have a huge investment of Mount Sinai, who is building a hospital here. Goods and services. So don't think of only setting up here but think of other investment opportunities as well, not just Paracel. There was another attachment. This is additional information. Just very quickly, I want to show one slide. Intellectual property, registry of properties, and arbitrage guarantee. We've got statistics of citizen safety. Paraguay is a very safe place, legally and physically. So if anybody needs more information, please let us know. But on the last slide, can you show that, Latifi? Can you show the map? Paraguay is green in security risk or control risks. That is an international foundation that looks at several risks. Paraguay is basically at the same level as Sweden and the other countries in the north, especially when compared to Argentina and Uruguay. So we provide you with all the securities. If you have any questions, let us know. So from our office, we want to thank you, and we want to make sure that we are available, and we would like to answer any questions, and if we cannot answer them, then we can do so bilaterally. We can meet with you bilaterally. Thank you, Latifi and Mr. Catoni. Thank you, Federico. We learned a lot this morning. Please do not forget to leave your questions there on the side. And at the end of the presentations, it's very important for you to write down the name of the person asking the question and the name of your company, your name, and who you're asking the question to. Okay, next is Margarita Peña. She's the director of the Unified Business. It's an office that opens companies. She will talk to us today about the steps to open or set up a business or a company in Paraguay. Welcome, Ms. Margarita Peña. Good morning, everyone. Special greeting to the Minister, Liz Kramer, and to everyone in the MIC and the leaders, especially the foreigners. Welcome. Welcome to Paraguay. Today, I have to explain a little bit about our institution, and I will take, this will be a brief presentation, so I just want to welcome everyone. SUACE, as the name says, is a unified system to open and close businesses or companies. This institution was created by a law in 2013 as a sole window or single window for opening, closing, or formalizing companies, locally or foreign companies. Our goal is to make the process simple, fast, and transparent. The word transparent is of great importance. Our mission is to favor the business climate in Paraguay in order to contribute so that the investors can feel at ease for their investments in Paraguay. What are the institutions that make it up? By law is the judiciary with the General Direction of the Public Registry, the IPS, which is a social security, the Ministry of Employment and Safety with the General Registry of the Workers, and the SME Vice Ministry and the Ministry of the Interior with the General Bureau of Immigrations, Ministry of Treasury and Taxes, and the Judiciary. So, what can be done before SWASE? We can, okay, there's a, thanks to an agreement with the institutions, with the ministry, and the commitment with the SWASE, we have an agreement with the immigrations to ease the process of immigrations in Paraguay. And for this, we grant something that is called a constancy, or a written acknowledgement signed by the Vice Minister and myself. So that helps. So that helps us if we present this. They present this along with the other requirements for immigrations of this administration. So the investor can do his paperwork and get his immigrations document, which is important to open a company in Paraguay. Then we have the public registry of local companies that grants the registration. Also, for you have a license of the businessman that is from 1980. It's not very common, but some companies still ask for this. So this is a requirement for some companies. The written acknowledgement issued by the IPS, or Social Security, for the employees and employer, the written acknowledgement, and the SME document, which is an incentive for the SMEs in several aspects. Then we have the business patent. I love the dogs. But, and the municipal license, thanks to an agreement with the municipality of Asunción. What are the benefits that SWASE provides? It's a sole place, it's a one-stop shop. You save time and money, obviously. You don't have to have employees to sign up in the IPS, because sometimes in order to sign up, you have to have employees. But through an agreement, we have managed to sign up without having employees yet. So then once you have employees, you just communicate them. And then obviously this can be done personally, and you don't need intermediaries, you don't need brokers. We have some support to fill in documents, and then in the Ministry of Trade, inside the country, in the main cities. The next one, requirements to obtain the foreign investment. It's important for foreign investors to know that they have to fill in a form. We have a webpage of SWASE. We profile of the investment project, passport, background check of your country, an acknowledgement of when you came into the country, an Interpol certificate, sworn statement of the commitment to do the opening of the company through SWASE, and the minimum investment is of $70,000. $70,000 is not a deposit, it's what the investment will be. Minimally, it has to be $70,000 minimum. So if the investment is 10 years, it means 70,000 divided by 10 years. It's just to have a sort of an idea of when it doesn't mean that they have to deposit $70,000, because there's many times there's questions about this. And through the agreement, we request certain things for the investment, but the person from immigrations will help you with this. So then I will just go over this. Next, we have the requirements. What are the requirements for opening a company through SUACE. The law is not compulsory. You don't have to use SUACE. It's not compulsory. You don't have to use SUACE. It's optional. So there are some requirements according to our office. It's form number 2 that is on our webpage, which is www.suace.gov.py. Then there's the form that you can download, fill out, sign, and deliver physically to SUACE. A photocopy, a legalized photocopy of the document of the partners, an original, and 3 copies of the bylaws of the company. All of this is provided by the notary who prepares the documents. The documents that are prepared outside SUACE are the bylaws, of course, that go through a notary public if they want to become an LLC or a company, or if any company wants to set up in Paraguay. So they have to go through this. Later on, I will talk to you about other legal figures that a lot of this can be done online to reduce the time. This law that creates companies by simplified actions is thought out to simplify the creation of new companies. We seek to lower costs and time. It's totally digital, on record time of 72 hours to start with no minimum investment required. And one person can be the sole investor, and he can also partner up with another company, and it can issue only they can also issue only nominative shares. It can pay taxes as a company. It's a legal figure for us. It is very important because Paraguay is a place that can attract a lot of investment because of the opportunities that there are, and this law will contribute to create this business climate that we need. And so we can also improve our investment climate. This maximum time nowadays for foreign companies, we say 30 days approximately because of the paperwork required outside the registry, because they are documents that they have to, so we sort of say 15 days to obtain the residency permit, the residency, and then another 15 days. So that's why there's another extra 15 days, but the maximum maximum period to create a company, so say that they are missing something, but they already have the tax ID, they already have the bylaws, well then they can also go through SUACE to become formal or to set up. So SUACE does not charge anything, collect anything. It only collects some fees that are paid through the banks just for setting up the company, for the SA and SRL. And for foreign investors, I guess these fees will be explained again by the immigrations officer. With regards to the Asunción municipality or town hall, it's nothing, almost nothing, 2,000 guaranis, and for the patent, it's basically nothing. Nonetheless, there is a use of soil or land cost. We need a technical report of the location, and that does a small cost as well. very, very, very low. And if there are any questions, this is our email address and this is our webpage. We will always be available. We love to answer questions, and it's a great honor to be with you. And I hope you have a good day. Thank you very much, Ms. Margarita, for your presentation. It was a lot. Next, I want to invite the people of the Ministry of Labor. We will be with Karina Gomez. Karina Gomez is the director of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. She's an attorney. She's graduated by the National University. And she will talk to us about human capital in Paraguay. We will also be with Magdalena Bataglia, who is the General Director of Employment. We are working hand in hand with this direction to obtain the employability of Paraguayans. She will not present, but she will be here for any questions. Welcome, Karina. Thank you, Minister Kramer and everyone today. I do feel honored to be here with you in order to share everything that has to do with the labor relations and everything that has to do with labor legislation so that we can allow human capital so the employees can also be protected and they can have decent jobs. We know that the investment in our country, we're trying for it to be sustainable, and we are happy to have companies like yours that obviously will allow growth and also human capital that can be trained, because it is the pillar that sustains a company with regards to investment. In that sense, human capital is protected by our constitution, and I want to present everything that has to be known so that the workers who will work or be employed in Paraguayan territory can be protected, and of course that can be productive for the company. Next, please. As of last year, Paraguay passed a law, a partial labor, or this regulates work, so it's not like full, it sets a minimum hours of employment and a maximum hours. So this type of work is very important, very interesting and applicable in the building sites for those workers that do not have to spend a lot of time or hours for performing their duties. In that sense, and the WTO, or excuse me, WLO says that all of those workers that have less hours will be covered and will be protected. We do this through this law of last year, this law. And next, the main characteristics of this agreement is because one can recruit human capital for different moments in regards to the contract. You can establish at the beginning of the working relationship or the labor contract, the term, this type, if it's per time, it says that when we will hire qualified labor or non-qualified labor, we determine the duration and the lifetime, or we know beforehand when we sign the agreement we know we have a start date and an end date. If it's a partial contract, a partial time contract, it can be a 3-month contract, 6-month contract, 1 year, and it will be determined according to the time of execution of the works that obviously will allow us the full time or the one that does not have an expiry date allows for a stability of the worker. There's a start date, but there is no end date for the contract. In that sense, it provides the worker with the security of having work for an indefinite time period, but it can be ended for other circumstances. Sometimes in partial work, according to the work to be done or the service to be provided, does not require, it can be done not continuously or just occasionally. It can be occasional together with time, and it can also be done by these agreements within the special clauses that will be negotiated. These conditions have a minimum hours per week, which is 16 hours per week, and go all the way to up to a maximum hours that would be 32 hours per week. It cannot be less than 16 or more than 32. That is the special characteristic of the partial time contract. It has to be formalized in writ. In Paraguay, everything that has to do with paid work or labor, we recommend that it's formalized in writ for the just to be, if it's not in writ, if it's not in writ, then we will always favor the worker. So if it's not clearly in writ, so it's more convenient to have a contract. The special contract with regards to partial employability stands out from the other agreements because there cannot be exclusivity with one company. We allow this flexibility so that the worker can work with 1 or 2 or 3 different companies at the same time if and when the dates and times that are determined. Of course, we exclude the work that has to do with nurses and doctors and transport companies and teachers because they have their own laws. So they're excluded from this. How much would we pay the workers if we give them a job that is not full-time? If it's work done during the day, and if he's providing service, if it's during the morning or during the evening, the division would be during the day. The day is 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So then he would make 10,500 guaranis per hour. With that 10,542, that is under $2 per hour, allows that to be the base for estimating a salary, an hourly rate salary. You cannot pay under 10,500 guaranis. If it's at night, from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day, there is a 30% added on. So the nighttime hourly rate, if it's partial, work, they will make 15,600 guaranis per hour. This would be a little over $2. Then if it's done during the day and during the night, is a mixed. And employers always ask us, or companies, what happens with the extraordinary hours? In part-time contracts, because it is a special type of contract, there's a maximum amount of hours. It can be only up to 32 hours per week. So there's a limit in the law, unless there's an exceptional case, but then those hours obviously will be paid with an additional 50% if it's during the day and 100% if it's during the night. All of the investors, all the companies can use our calculator, which is right there. The link is right there, our official calculator, so that they can estimate the time and, of course, what hours would be or how to estimate the payment. We have to acknowledge that the system, social security system in our country is under the social security regime, and this regime is applied for the IPS. In this case, when we talk about workers that work in civil works exclusively or others, then the social security is done through the IPS. The IPS has norms that set the fixed rates to be paid, or to pay for the to pay the taxes, so that the worker can take advantage of the health coverage for himself or his family. And it's also part of his retirement fund. So when the employer pays the salary, he has to retain 9% of the salary and pay 16.5% as into the pension fund. Later on, I will show you this so that they can pay monthly into the IPS, so that the worker is fully protected for any disease or work or labor or any type of issue, so that or health issue. The worker must pay 100%, or excuse me, the worker has to be paid 100% of the minimum wage in order to benefit of the health benefits. What are the rights of a part-time worker? He has the same rights as granted by the Constitution for every worker within Paraguay. We have to remember this if they are national or foreign workers. Here, the Constitution protects everyone. So without going into the nationality, everybody has the same labor protection, maternity rights, special permits, and vacations after 1 year of work. The 13th salary, which is paid once a year, and if there's any possibility of the family provision per child, it's also stipulated in our labor code as an additional benefit besides the salary. Next. What would be the benefits that can be granted? Or what are the benefits of this part-time work? And right now, during this emergency, that during this emergency pandemic situation, 1,400 people have been employed like this. So it provides equality, it provides flexibility and there's a framework, a legal framework that allows that in the case that there's any justified or unjustified causes that cause if somebody's fired, then they would receive some indemnity according to the hours that they have worked, and this type of contract generates within the studies that have been made through the World Labor Organization the productivity of the human labor. It allows them to work less time but with more effort. This part-time labor complements the other types of contracts that allow the businessman or business person to choose under the same conditions, specifically the work code, the labor code. These agreements are according to the modality, then it can be done per day, per month, it can be a participation, and according to time, it can also, if it's determined or undetermined, it can also be done. We have already spoken of an agreement according to duration. And we speak of a determined time period, not based on partial labor, which is special, but we speak of full-time work. This means if it's 8 hours a week or 48 hours, 8 hours a day or 48 hours a week, then there's a minimum wage that is $2,192,000, about $316 a month. That can be paid for a determined period of time. So with a start date and an end date, and for an indefinite time period, or for the execution of a set period. These fixed time contracts cannot be over 5 years. They cannot have over 5 years of validity. With regards of the type of payment in our country, there's different ways of estimating the salary, but the protection system of Social Security and the way of protecting the salary through a decree of the executive sets the limits. What are the salary bases of which the employees must comply with? In that sense, the minimum wage can be paid at the end of the month or at the end of the service, or also there can be a daily rate. We can also have the days that are used in the sectors. Sometimes there can be a climate condition, maybe it rains, or maybe there can be certain circumstances so they cannot carry out the work. So then there's a payment per day, which would be 84,000 per day, more or less $12 a day. So there's daily rates. We also have to know that there can be commissions if there's a base payment, if there's a percentage of sales, or then there's a time period where we begin the works, and through this, so once something with deliverables, once something is delivered, then the agreement ends. Also, a participation foresees that the workers can have access to the profits of a company. In that case, this is used a lot, a percentage of the profits. Then there's first employment and a way to train our human capital so they can acquire the experience and that they can be more competitive in the future. So then there's it's a training contract, and this is special because it allows from 1 to 3 years exceptionally. It allows the payment of 60% of the minimum wage, which is only about $190 for the work carried out. This agreement, this apprenticeship or training contract, helps the employer, in this case, besides giving him work, also teaches the employee. Karina, we only have 5 minutes left, but thank you so much for your presentation. Yes, the purpose of the contract is to the employer must teach him or provide him with a learning opportunity, besides giving him an opportunity of working. Obviously, there's a schedule that the Ministry of Labor has to approve, and then there's a fixed, the payment is up to about 60% of the minimum wage. So for 6 hours a day and up to 1 year of term, the salary will be 1,315,000 or 50,000 per day. So I'm showing you here what the operative cost would be, so that you can establish a competitivity with regards to salaries, always showing you this as a base. Of course, in the country we set this free simulation. This means that this is the minimum, and anything above this, anything can be negotiated above this, obviously, with regards to salary and capacity and training and productivity. But this would be the base, and you cannot pay under this. So the training contract has a base of 1,500,000. The fixed term has a 2,155,000. The partial time contract, as you can see, has a minimum hourly wage, and the total would be about 922,000. And obviously, up to 30, when they work up to 32 hours, they can make the cost will be 1,600,000, always considering the payments into the IPS system. The daily wage is a minimum of 18 days worked, and the cost, if we add the salary, such as the payments into the IPS, it would be about 1,600,000 guaraníes. This is just for you to more or less estimate what the cost would be. The payment of the salary and contribution. In this case, this sum has an operative cost for the human capital, but it would be the base. As I said, the free stipulation of the salaries is obviously, it can be done according to the complexity of the work, of the productivity, the training, and the training and the learning for the different people. Magdalena Bataglia, we support Paracel so that they can create those profiles so that the people can be trained, with regards to productivity and with their efforts. Thank you very much. And we're here for any question you may have. Thank you, Karina. This will be of great use for everyone. I see that there's many questions, so thank you very much. Next, I want to introduce Ms. Alicia Quintana, who's the legal director of immigrations. She's an attorney and she's an expert in public administration. She will talk to us about the requirements for immigrations into Paraguay. She will be with Fabio Espinosa, who is the director of immigrations control. Good morning. Today we want to explain a little bit about immigrations in Paraguay and the services we provide. Okay, so immigrations is part of the Ministry of the Interior, and what it does is verify the existence of irregular residents in Paraguay and grant the residency permits to foreigners that want to set or establish here. Fabio will explain that up to yesterday, all of this was closed. Today, thanks to our director and her good work, there was a decree that decided to partially open these control posts. Good morning, everyone. I will explain the scope of this new decree of partial opening of the borders, and I want to about the flights that we are programming with Uruguay. There is a protocol for sanitary surveillance and civil aviation that are already authorized by the national government and CODENA. And this is especially for businessmen that want to come, or business people that want to come to invest in our country. There's a protocol, there's a sanitary protocol. So there's 13 posts that are enabled now. And we are looking into the new protocols in the near future, always bearing in mind the sanitary protocol. These are some of the regional offices that our office has. The main office is in Asunción, and there's a Suase office as well there. There are 8 regional offices: Ciudad del Este, Encarnación, Pedro Juan Caballero, Salto del Guairá, Pilar, Concepción, Santa Rita, and Nueva Esperanza. There, the foreigners that want to have the residence there can do their immigration documents. They can present their documents to request in the permanent residency. So this is our legal framework, a law from 1996, which created the General Immigrations Law. This is a type of residency that we have. The first one is granted to foreigners who will stay no longer than 6 months, and it can be increased. This is generally for labor issues, and the minimum requests would be the ID, with life and residence certificate, the Interpol certificate, and also a labor certificate. This is usually granted in 72 hours. The cost is about 650,000 guaranis. The other type would be the temporary residence for people who will stay in the country for a minimum of 1 year. It could be extended up to 6 years, depending on the activity or the motive of residency for people coming from Mercosur. The period of residency would be at least 2 years. This temporary residence has a cost of $1,800,000, I think she said, and depending on what the person will be doing in Paraguay, the requirements are similar to the requirements for the permanent residency. The permanent residency is for foreigners who will stay definitely. And here I wanted to talk about the requirements. For the permanent and the temporary residency, the foreigners must have all of the documents required, must be legalized or apostilled. This is birth certificate, the ID or passport, background check, and the civil status, or if they're married or divorced, or if they are widowed. The national documents we request for the life and residency, the Interpol, the sanitary document that has to have the visa of the Ministry of Health, among others. And also they have to show that they have enough money or solvent. How can a foreigner request a permanent residency? Depending on the country of origin and the existence of, if they are married, if they have children, they can request to be the permanent residency or the residency through this degree. And this allows the ID, a national ID, to be issued to the foreigners and their partners and family. Now I will talk about SUACE, or the residency through SUACE, which Ms. Margarita already mentioned. We are part of the SUACE, the single window. We, together with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, we work together for foreign nationals, providing them with this in a maximum time period of 15 days. This is, well, I wanted to share here a little bit about the statistics. So immigrations has been issuing these permits since 2018 to date. Here you can see the documents of permanent residency issued from last year to date through SUACE. Thank you so much for being here. And if there's any questions, we're here for you. I think that Latifi has our contact information, so we're here for anything that may come up. Alicia and Fabio, thank you so much for the presentation. Now we will start with the Q&A. I see that there's many questions. Before we begin, I want to thank everyone for being here and for the 243 participants for giving us their time. I know that today time is a valued resource, so thank you so much to everyone for being with us this morning. Also, I'd like to mention that Rodolfo Boga is with us. He's part of the board, and Andres Vera, who is part of Boga attorneys, to answer any questions that have to do with taxes. So we have them here. I would like to ask Daniela Fuquino for her to open her mic. We will read the questions and then we will answer them. That is why I want you to remember that the name of your company is important. Just so put your name, the name of your company, and who you want to answer your question. And also, I want you to sign up so that we can have all of, so please give us your email so that we can send you all the presentations. Good morning. I will do the questions in Portuguese because most of the questions are in Portuguese. If there's any questions, you just ask me. As we have promised, we will answer all of the questions that had a pending answer yesterday. We will answer them. Yesterday we had a question from Laureano from CETAL. Has the Paraguayan government foreseen any tax regime that will be special to Paracel as a tax reduction or any type of benefit on labor costs? Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well, or is there any lag? We are talking with our colleagues from the Ministry of Labor, and as far as we know, there is no special treatment, any special discount or tax regime for manual labor, but I want to let the Ministry of Labor people mention if there's anything special that we might not know. Karina?
Solo de SENA y SEBRAE, si puedes comentar un poco, Karina. Tu micrófono.
Karina, sí.
Ahí está. Ahí va.
The Ministry of Labor, through the Service of Employment, is trying to establish a framework agreement that will allow the profiles of the people that may have access to any type of employment opportunity can be trained by the institutions that depend on the Ministry of Labor, which are the SNPP, or the labor training, or SINAFOCAL. So we will try to set a bank of a profile that will allow the company to determine the amount of the qualified labor that they need. And of course, if they require any special training so that they can be ready for the labor market. I don't know if I just wanted to add something to that. There are agreements at a Mercosur level that acknowledge all of the payments made in Brazil and Paraguay and so forth. So depending on where the worker is from, if they will work in Paraguay, or there's a possibility of having a certain acknowledgement of the payments that they have made into Paraguay, into the system. We have certain documents ready to explain how this works, but our suggestion is that every supplier looks for their own tax advice with their own, Paracel can send you the information as a, yes. The IPS has foreseen, so whatever is paid outside will be computed here, but it will depend on immigrations to see if they are granted the temporary residence here, so they can pay into the system. And this case, 9 and 16% that is established by the IPS. Yeah, that's a compensation agreements into the Social Security, so they can be joined. That the years paid. Yeah, good comment. Thank you. Another question. I'm switching to Portuguese again. There's many languages. Luis Moita asked if it will be a free trade zone. If Paracel will be a free trade zone. Do you want us to answer from Paracel or? Rodolfo, go ahead. Paracel is exploring for potential regimes that it would like maybe simultaneously. One is a free trade zone, the other one is a maquila regime, and the other one is the 1690 investment law, and another one is a sort of umbrella that will cover all of this investment guarantee law. So also we have a document that we prepared that we will send out in Spanish and English that covers these types of aspects, and it explains what with the same clarification I made, suggesting that everybody should get their own information. But anyway, this explains what the regimes are and how the supplier, or if the supplier can set up a local company, and what would be the tax regime applied in this case to the sales of goods and services that he makes, if it's within the free trade zone or not, if it's under the maquila regime or not, and other possible scenarios. So we are exploring this. This is a possibility, but we are working on this draft, and then we can share the document with the Paracel team. I just wanted to add to Mr. Voga's response that the incentives are available to all investors. You just have to decide which one you want, but as I had mentioned, you can apply to the 1690 law, which is a requirement for so you can apply to any of these. They are not exclusive, and we are open to help you analyze and decide what's best for you. Just an additional comment. Paracel is looking for the structure, and it will implement the most efficient structure for Paracel as a company, and also as possible for the providers, so that we can mitigate any costs, or that we can minimize all the costs that have to do with setting up a company or importing machinery, and then again, any utilities that.
Próxima pregunta.
Perdón,
sí.
Sobre el punto que están hablando y lo que dijo el doctor Boga.
About what you are talking about, I want to say that you mentioned
los incentivos que está manejando.
That the incentives that Paracel has have to do with the free trade zones and maquila and the 1690 law and the law that guarantees investments. They are all, let's say, or Paracel can have access to all the incentives, but if it goes into a free trade zone, the free trade zone regime does not grant certificate of origins, which is very important to have in mind while we are analyzing this type of incentives, fiscal incentives. Just this, that is very important.
Ok, obrigada. E acho que a próxima pergunta...
Thank you. And the next question from yesterday, from Alexandro Carneiro, he said, in the case of equipment that is 1 part Brazilian imported, and the imported part, does have to be from Brazil, or would it be sent directly to Paraguay, or will there be any agreement, Brazil-Paraguay, to avoid double or excessive taxation? About this, about the temporary admission, I'm talking to Mr. Catoni. I want to give him the word. It's a case-by-case study too, and we would have to talk to customs as well. Mr. Catoni? It's important to mention that the benefits for importing machinery and equipment, what it grants is the it frees the trade, the taxes of that capital asset, that asset. There are companies that import parts of different origins, of different places, different countries, different continents. And all of these are, so what they pay for the goods to come into Paraguay is 1.5 to 2% of import duties. I don't know if this answers your question.
Con mucho gusto podemos profundizar con cualquier empresa en sus casos particulares, porque sabemos que cada empresa tiene una situación en particular.
We know that every country is, every company is different and has different needs. So we are here to have private meetings with any of the companies that may have. Okay, Alexandre Carneiro, if you are in the meeting, if you have any other questions, then you can contact the team. Next, today's questions, some people are asking about the presentations. We will share these presentations, but for that it is important for you to sign up on the link that we have already sent out on the chat box of the meeting. We need your email addresses, and then we will share all the information available, including the investment guide in Portuguese. Fernando Fernandez from ABB wants to ask Federico, what would be the tax that a specialist would pay, a foreign specialist would pay in Paraguay? I will have Mr. Volga answer this later, but this question is a question we are usually asked by people from the Chamber of Commerce of Brazil. I shared a link there in the chat box with articles. If the service is provided from Brazil and is paid in Brazil, then apparently there are no taxes here. But if it's provided in Paraguay, if it's taxable here, I understand that the tax can be 15 to 30%. I'm not so sure. That's why I want Mr. Volga to answer, because he's a specialist in tax issues. Thank you, Federico. Yes, the taxes can vary, and they will vary depending if the service is provided in Brazil or in Paraguay. If it's in Paraguay, if the service provider is part of the free trade, if he's doing it in the free trade zone or if it's doing it outside the free trade zone, it's not possible to give you one answer. So with the help of Mr. Sosa, and with that document that we will send you, we think that we can have an answer of at least how you think you will provide that service and from where. And of course, later on, we can do a more specific analysis, because the taxes vary. Thank you, Mr. Volga. We will be able to analyze this on a case by case. And in some cases, yes, it would be more convenient to set up the company in Paraguay, also depending on the final type of contract that the company decides to have and the type of service, because it's a case-by-case thing. I suggest you read the legislation that we have shared, and also was prepared by the Volga team. The next question from Rosangela Carteiro. Please clarify the use of equipment of one country and other countries, if they will be used for the execution of infrastructure services, for example, compactors, trucks, and the lifespan of 5 years and the further sale of these equipments. Yeah, that's a similar question to the previous one. And we are talking to Mr. Gattoni about this. I don't know if Mr. Gattoni wants to say something about this. Yes, as I had mentioned, the incorporation of Yeah, the law 6090 says that everything can be imported, but law 60 is destined to mainly to activities that have to do with farming, mining, industry, and services. There are some activities that the scope is not, or they are not subject to the law 6090. So when we talk about the goods that will be destined for roadwork, for example, this is not covered by law 6090, so they will not benefit from this regime. If the diggers, trucks are destined for mines, then yes, they are subject to the law, or they can benefit. A little bit what we can do is write to Federico and send me. Just be specific so that we can provide you with a precise answer.
Muchas gracias, señor Gattoni. Ahí voy a compartir su
Thank you, Mr. Gattoni. I will put your email address here too. I will share it. Thank you so much. And this also answers this question of Mr. Deira from Fortis. Up to 2 years, so they can ask this individually as well. Yeah, I want to, just for everybody to bear this in mind, besides all of the fiscal advantages in the country, the customs regime also establishes that there is a regime for temporary imports of goods whose, if they are imported to develop an activity or provide a service. That is a regime that is exclusively in the customs area. And also when they will bring machines. With other companies, what happened is that there is no service provision with regards to large machinery that is, so what happens is they bring them from abroad, they receive the machinery, and then 5-6 months later, that machine leaves the country. So what those companies can do, if they will import a good for a service that does not exist in the country, then they can go into the temporary admissions regime and then they leave again. So that regime can be granted for 1 year and for another extra year, so they can stay in the country for 2 years. Thank you, Mr. Gattoni. The next question of Mr. The Swiss company, he'd like to know if Paraguay has any tax retention for goods and services hired from Brazil, since these countries do not have an agreement to avoid double taxation. Okay, about this question, I want to give the mic to the other colleagues, but it's the same question that we had in the past. If the service is provided in Paraguay, we have to, it's a case by case, and with the countries that there is no double taxation agreement, then possibly there is there's double taxation, but we'd have to analyze this on a case by case and see what, I think, yeah, the previous question was already answered. I don't know if Mr. Wolga wants to add something else. Just one more thing. The tax retention will be applied if the service is provided from outside the country. So depending on the type of service that would be provided, and depending on the type of goods or services sold, in some cases, it can be more convenient for the foreign provider to set up a company or have a local rep, or that they can provide the services from a free trade zone, because so then we can mitigate some of the retentions or tax retentions. And just to add that part of the final purpose of this new legislation, of the tax reform, is to provide incentives to the provision of these services from Paraguay. And that is why under these scenarios, it is convenient to provide them in Paraguay, and for many other reasons as well. Question from Fernando Cuglia is also very similar. I think we've already answered it. And if you have anything specific, or Fernando, if you have anything more, a question from Hattori from Fuji Electric. Is it possible for is it possible that Paracel can open on a document? It can be, if it can be paid through a letter of credit, if there can be a letter of credit opened as a guarantee of payment to Paracel for one supplier. I think Johan could answer this. Did you understand, Mr. Johan, the question?
No, I didn't. If we could open a letter of credit, was that the question?
Yes, if Paracel would be willing to offer a letter of credit to guarantee payment to suppliers.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. You disappeared. Yeah, that is.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. If Paracel can open a letter of credit to the payment for the payment of a supplier, of a vendor.
Yeah, that's a matter of what we negotiate during the contractual discussions, but theoretically, yes.
Ok. Uma pergunta de Edson Rocha.
A question from Edson Rocha from the Enesa Engineering Company about the law 213, article 62. Please clarify, must we hire people in Brazil for this, or can we hire Brazilians, or does the Paraguayan law have any problem with hiring foreigners? Is there a percentage of local labor that we must contract? Please let us know if there's a percentage of labor that must be hired locally. Karina, can you please answer this? Yes, Mr. Edson. Actually, the national constitution that is above the law that you mentioned, that is the labor code, says that all of the people of Paraguay, or all of the residents in Paraguay, have equal access to labor. So they have the right, residents have the same right, but they must have the residency, as the technicians explained, so that they can have access to this right, so they can have the same labor rights for the worker and also for the company. In this sense, the law does speak of a preference, but it does not establish a limit or a percentage more than people just have to be trained for the job. That doesn't mention percentages. I also would like to say that from Paracel, we also invite all of our suppliers, encourage all of our suppliers to look to hire locally. I mean, to look to hire Paraguayans, because with the Paracel project, we would like to develop the Paraguayan society. So it is very important to employ and hire locally. You have to know that you have available a Ministry of Labor that is supporting us from day one to train everyone that would need to be trained in order to be able to be hired in the future. As Ms. Karina said, there is no percentage set, but we do have the interest as a company of Paraguayans being hired. If we do not have enough local hires because there's not enough trained personnel, then we will hire people from abroad to be able to comply with what Neil said yesterday, because time is of the essence. We have a tight schedule because by 2023, Paracel has to be up and running. I also want to say that within the Ministry of Industry and Trade, Radiex has a list of companies, and we can also put any of your companies in touch with local and national companies that also have access to the databases. And the Ministry of Labor has a lot of databases of Paraguayans that have come back recently because of the pandemics. So there is interesting manual labor, and it will be available, and it is here. So it will be easier and faster to have access. Besides mentioning the interesting manual labor that is available here. Thank you, Federico. Wellington França from Nurion asks if beyond the labor issues in Paraguay, are there other requirements or trade unions, union costs that should be taken into account? Actually, in our country, unions are protected. So this is a right, and this is acknowledged internationally. We have signed an international agreement with the international, or with the WLO, so that the employees can be part of any union. But there have to be certain conditions, certain requirements that are set by law. But it does not establish any type of, it's not compulsory. So any project of any company that wants to set up in Paraguay, so their people don't have to, okay, unions are not compulsory. They may do so if they wish to. In this case, we only protect fundamental rights that are guaranteed constitutionally and within the legislation. In this case, is there any extra cost for the company, for the employer, with regards to unions? No. Again, unions are not compulsory. They are optional. Obviously, we allow them and we respect the freedom. It's not an obligation for the employer to have unions. If they want to, they can be part of federation, and the workers do not have to have unions either. They don't have to be part of a union. It's not compulsory. But it is important to highlight, that the collective negotiations between the workers and the employers can be done for the better conditions of the working conditions. This is guaranteed within our framework, our legal framework. Karina, I want to, for what I know of labor law, because many years I was drafting the human rights and labor rights memos, there, compared to other countries in the region or the world, there is no direct costs. There are no costs involved, there are no fixed costs for unions, okay? But I understand that within the IPS contribution, there are, within the contribution to IPS, yes, there are some union costs. Yes, businessmen must know that the contribution that they make into IPS, which is Social Security, that's 16.5% of the salary, then 2% of that goes to the organisms that are part of the Ministry of Labor, which are SINAFOCAL and SNPP. And of course, with this infrastructure, with this money, then what they do is, with this money, they train people in the country. So the agreements that can be signed between the SNPP or the Ministry of Labor with the companies, of course, will be welcome. And to say something else here, if any of your companies wants to bring specialists to train local labor, and if they have to do a quarantine, then they have to do the quarantine period, they train the local labor with SNPP. They can do some tailor-made programs, and then They can have more locally trained Paraguayans. Don't forget that IPS pays retirement fund, and it is health. It covers any accident on the job, and it also covers any accident of the employee on the way to work or on the way back from work. And also it's a health coverage. So it's one of the best insurance in the world, because it covers health benefits, health insurance, and retirement fund. So it's a great incentive for the employees. Yes, exactly, Federico. In that sense, the IPS is good for the employees, and it also provides benefits for their families. So the employer has the security. They know that the health of their employees is covered. So it will allow the workers to be assisted health-wise if there's any work-related accidents, etc. Obviously, the companies can also have a complementary private health insurance system on top of this. And also, in our country, Social Security is compulsory. It's not optional. All companies must pay into it. So through SUACE, as was well explained by the technicians, SUACE basically makes up all of these platforms in order to provide more, it makes it easier for the employer. Marli Matsuguma asked about collective agreements. Marli, I think Karina already mentioned about this. And for collective agreements, also we can reinforce these negotiations. Itamar Barbosa wants to know about training or trainees. What is the minimum amount of trainees that we must have? Well, our labor code says that for every 10 workers, there has to be one trainee or, yeah. So this is a circumstance that is because the employer can have the option to hire whoever he finds fit to benefit the company. In this sense, we do want the support as social responsibility. It's the first employment. We seek all of the companies to support them to provide the first job. So then this would allow them to have a certification that will allow him and to be competitive in the local market. But obviously it depends on all the employees. Marcio from Yoshin Engineering says, can we have a summary of all the requirements of the labor work? Yes, we have, or my office has everything to do with hiring and contracting and conflicts that could occur. We know we have the freedom of dealing with employees. We have a patron. We help with the communications and to register the incoming or outgoing employees. So we have occupational health office. We have Social Security office, that is the middleman. We have a guideline and also a guideline that we can provide. And we also work with a guideline for the investor. Also, I want you to know that that Paracel has its own occupational health, safety, and not only the direct employees, but also the third parties that provide services must also abide by our policies. We will always take the most care of the people involved. See, and within the document that we have already shared, you will be able to see what is the number of the decree of the security norms and work in Paraguay. So you probably already received this manual, and it's there.
Obrigada.
Thank you.
A próxima pergunta,
The next question, Fernando Fernandes from ABB.
Aranceles para la importación de bienes de capital para el proyecto. ¿Es
For the
aplicable
project, is this applicable
a Paraguay en general
for
para los que ingresen a zona franca?
or is it just for those coming into the free trade zones? Mr. Catoni, can you please give us a hand here?
El ingreso con las excepciones fiscales, digamos, establecida en la ley 60.
Yeah, in the law 60 is for coming into Paraguayan territory. The free trade zone has its own law and does not require any type of incentive so that that machinery can come into the free trade zone. It can do so directly through the special treatment that the free trade zones have. So it depends on the companies to have the setting up in the free trade zone, or to decide to use the free trade zone and then just keep the machinery in the free trade zone. When we talk about outside the free trade zone, then yes, law 60 is the best option to import tax-free.
Solo mencionar también para acotación que está en un proceso que hay que presentar para ser acogido bajo la ley 60.
Yeah, there is a process that you have to go through to be able to be part of the law 6090. It has to do with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, and the applicable taxes would, if not, they would be the normal tax regime. So thank you, Mr. Catoni. I think there's one more question. Replanagem, if it's possible to, can we use this tax incentive law for machinery that is rented, temporarily rented? Yes. The customs does not check this. It's the company must request the import of the machinery, and they have the right of admitting the machinery temporarily. Maybe it's rented or not.
Para que se pueda tener el derecho de ingresar.
So they can have the right of temporary admission.
Obrigada. E tem mais uma pergunta.
There's one more question here that I think in the same topic. Is there a special treatment, customs treatment for the imports of capital goods and anything that Paraguay will need, and in the countries in which, okay, tax and duties for things that come in through the river? Yeah, my colleague Andres Vera is here with me, and Andres, do you have anything? I don't know if I understood the question, but about importing, I would like to say that, or for final imports into Paraguay, we're not talking about any type of special regime. If the good to be imported is a capital asset in Mercosur, then it is free of taxes. And of course, VAT would apply, even though that company applied to the law 6090 or other, yes, independently, because we're talking about no special regime because of the Mercosur rules of the import goods. If it's within the classification, then the tax is 0. But the VAT would apply, and any other additional taxes, which are minimum. That for the general terms with no special type of regimes, and we're talking about. And also in the case that there isn't of the goods, if it's Mercosur origin or not. the same situation there. The tax would be 0%, but the VAT would apply. Now, if we are talking about temporary admission, and if that were applicable, then the import would be with the suspension of taxes. So we would have to present a guarantee to the local customs to guarantee this, and there would be a small financial cost because obviously the taxes are suspended. They're not exonerated. They would be suspended until when the goods are re-exported or until the regime is changed and the import is final and all of the taxes are paid. If they benefit from the law 6090, we'll talk about when it's applicable and when not, then the import within what is included into the investment project, then they are exonerated of the additional taxes. And in the case of free trade zones, then with an exclusion of the customs area, well, then the introduction would be done and the movement would be faster. And obviously then you wouldn't have to pay any taxes to introduce the goods into the free trade zones. I think I heard someone mention something additional, but Andres, just to add on, there was a question on machinery import from outside Mercosur. If it comes outside the area, then they would be paying the common tax, and depending on the good or the machinery, then this tax or fee could vary. Yes, they would pay the common fee if it's a capital asset within the list of Mercosur. One more thing, the import, no matter what it is, no matter what origin, and all the intermediation that there is beyond Paraguay. So the exonerations are on CIF, CIF costs into customs in Paraguay. So the way of selling, of negotiating, of importing, at the end of the day, the cost would be estimated with CIF costs, cost insurance rate. Because I heard Daniela said that if it came from the river or, but all of these negotiations that the company do to import the good is a negotiation of the company and their provider abroad. In customs, in Paraguayan customs, then they apply the different types of tax exemptions that exist in the country. That would be a practice for the import. So that would be something. I just wanted to mention this. I just want to say that we have 15 minutes left for questions. So if we can please focus on the questions. Thank you. Roberto Ridolfo from Veolia. The temporary residency, is it necessary for the worker to have a connection with the Paraguayan company for him to be granted this residency? Actually, yes, because the company that will hire him has to give him the work certificate that will allow him to request the residency in Paraguay. I don't know if the immigration technicians are here so they can provide more detail, but it is what allows. The contracting doesn't depend on, I mean, it is a fundamental element for the protection of the labor rights. Yes, we have the immigrations people here. Ms. Quintana's here. Yes, we already answered that in private, actually, but one of the requirements for the residency is the work certificate. Same thing in the requirements for the temporary residence. for a work labor, for a work contract, depending on the activity to be carried out in the country.
Una particularidad del lado del impuesto a la renta de las personas físicas vinculada al régimen de...
Something about the residency regime in Paraguay. If we are talking about temporary, in this case, the taxes of the physical, they would be paying personal income tax. But if we're talking about permanent residency, then in that case, they would be dealt with as residents, and then they would be paying taxes again, and they would have to register before the tax authorities. I understand that, I don't know if the immigrations team can correct this, but we can present, if there's no contract yet, there are other alternatives such as a university degree for, yes. I was going to say that depending on the activities, we have different types of documents that people can present to show their solvency. It can be a degree, university degree, or if they're students, the transcript, or in the case of employees, it would be the work contract with a company and documents of the company, depending on the activity that they come to develop in the country. So depending on what they come to do, we ask for different types of documents. Next question from Fernando Fernandez. What is the nearest port for capital goods through the river?
No sé si hay alguien de logística para
I don't know if we've got anything from logistics, or Paracel has any preference. Luciano, maybe? Yeah, well, there it depends on the good that has to be, or one thing that is already fixed. We're not talking about receiving the goods.
Okay. Carlos Valiente pregunta.
Carlos Valiente asks, when will Paracel inform us about the commercial and administrative conditions, or when will they give us a framework agreement to all the suppliers? We are preparing the quotes without knowing the important conditions.
Yeah, I think the important conditions were presented yesterday.
Eso se presentó ayer.
And they, based on those terms and conditions, I think you can provide a commercial bid. Thereafter, the detailed contractual discussion will start in October.
Ok, Carlos, então se você tiver dúvida...
Okay, Carlos, so if you have any further questions, check yesterday's presentation, the presentation given by Johan. There's a lot of information there, and if you have any questions, any specific questions, please talk to us. I think we're done with the questions. Okay, the last question. Roberto Ridolfo, are there any, must we set up legally a legal entity in Paraguay? Must we set up a legal entity in Paraguay? Is this compulsory? I will answer this. As we said before, there's no requirement, but in many cases, depending on the product or the good or service to be provided in the country, it may be more convenient for you to set up a company in Paraguay, be it in the territory or within the free trade zone as a free trade zone user. Just to add also, when everybody is welcome to set up a company, obviously, depending on the conditions and of each company. It will depend on you, but for all of the advantages that we have explained before and for the multiple business opportunities existing in Paraguay and in the north of the country, we would love for everyone to set up in the country. And for all of the clear advantages expressed by my colleagues from Immigrations, Labor, SUACE, and Mr. Catoni, I think there are many interesting advantages. So on behalf of Rediex, MIC, and all of the agencies of the Paraguayan government, we want to give you full guarantee that of constituting your company, or setting up your company in Paraguay. Thank you, Federico. Fernando Puntiliano says about Luciano's answer, okay, there can be a transshipment in Nueva Palmira, but it's more expensive. This is just a comment. Yes, of course, we have to check. But there is a port in Concepcion and in Asunción. It depends on the equipment and the size and all. Perfect. That was the last question. Again, for all of you asking where to get the presentations, please sign up on the link. We will put it one last time here in the chat box. So, because then we can have all your email addresses and we can send you the presentations. With this, we end the Q&A. And, okay, Latifi says, thank you very much. Daniela, Niels, do you want to give any closing words? Yes, thank you. I want to thank everyone who took part today. There's been many questions, and this shows that maybe it's not so easy, but also I want to ask you, thank you to the support of the authorities and the local government. We're very thankful. I also want to thank Latifi and Daniela for the hard work that they have done to put this together, to organize these 2 days. And now we will go back to work. And we want to thank you for your proposals to all the vendors. And we have months of work ahead of us for a good cause. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Niels. Rodolfo, do you want to say anything else before we close? Nothing to add. Feel free to contact us through the Paracel team so we can also support you with any legal questions you may have. We've prepared many documents that will be shared with you that explain some matters in general terms. Thank you, Rodolfo, for your words. Again, thank you, everyone, for being here today. It was very nice for us to share with you. We want to remind you that you're not alone. Paracel is here for you in order to help you and find all the answers that we can. If not, we will put you in touch with Rediex and other parts of the government. They are with us because they want this project to work. So do not hesitate. Again, all of the materials will be available. And let us work together because we trust and we know that Paracel will contribute to the development, economic development of Paraguay. So we need your support. Thank you very much again. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.